thin piece of thing as well. She just cut them up basically into little shapes like this. She punched 2 holes in the top, 2 holes in the middle, 2 holes at the bottom. And then she just threaded it accordingly, one by one, one by one. Just the traditional way, but of course we cheated just to make sure it works. But this sort of thing is like the best to make summer armor. You can bend it also because this thing works like PP board. I'm not sure if anyone has heard of PP board, but this material is what PP boards are made of in Japan. You see a lot of Japanese cosplayers mentioning PP board on their cosplay stuff to make armor and everything. This is actually the same material as PP board. So what you do is if you were to put a hot glue gun or heat gun to it, it actually bends, it wouldn't melt. It just wouldn't melt, so you don't worry about that. Put a heat gun on it, or a hairdryer, a really, really strong hairdryer, it bends. And then when it bends, you get this nice little summer armor shape, to whatever shape you want it. Make sense? Yeah. So this actually works. That's how I make my armor.
So can we hear about the clay armor? The paper clay armor?
Yeah, well I was going to say that I've got a picture of, I use this technique a lot as well, it's really good. I made, so excuse me on the photos, but I made this headdress out of this, and it works really well. And you can also do decorations on top of it with hot glue gun. I've got all these raised details on it, and you just do it on and then spray over it, and it looks really good. Yeah, this stuff's really good. Yeah, you just heat it with, yeah, it goes really well. It's really good. And then you can just punch holes in it as well. You can then, I then attach this on threading wire around it because it does have a slight resistance, so you have to have something strong to hold it in place. Yeah, so these are various sort of armor techniques that I've used. I'm just going to show you really quickly. One method that I use a lot is paper clay, which is amazing. It's amazing. You can get it in Hobbycraft, or you may be able to order it online, but the only place I've ever actually found it is Hobbycraft. What I do first is, this is quite a small example, I've brought you just big pieces I made out of it. You just have a cardboard base. Any old cardboard that you have, just cardboard boxes with a corrugated, with a corrugated, and then you can shape them. Cover it first with paper mache, let it really dry, and then afterwards you add paper clay onto it, which makes it really solid. And paper clay is amazing because it's literally like a kind of really fine powdered dust, and you start mixing it with water, and you have to let it set for about an hour first before you can use it. And once it's done, you have this kind of like a mush in your hand, basically, that you can start applying. And you rub it in little circles with water, and then eventually you then get a nice smooth surface. And to make it really smooth, there's a lot of sanding involved, and you can then use things like polyfiller to fill in any little gaps, and you keep sanding. If you're doing a big piece, I would recommend investing in a mouse sander. They're really small little ones that kind of just vibrate in your hand, and it makes the job a lot quicker. Pieces that I've made out of this, excuse the photos, but armor like this. It's rock solid, and I have it attached to the shoulders there on my costume, and it's really solid, and it looks really good. It comes out really nicely in photos. It has a really nice shine to it, but something like this isn't very good to perform in. As I was saying earlier with Julia, it can get a little bit heavy. So you wouldn't want to do a full day of performance in this, but it looks really good in your photos, and you can get all kinds of then finishes with it. With something like this, I then used pearlescent paints, just acrylic paints all over it to get this sort of gentle sheen to it. Also, it's really good for then, see there's elastic on the back. This is a legged armor piece. It goes around like that. What you can do is, you have to sew the elastic on before you put the paper clay, because once you have paper clay on top, it goes rock solid and you can't go through it. If you sew it on really gently while you still have the paper mache drying, and then go a little bit over the back so it's supported, you can get really, it's really stiff, it's not going to come off. And then you paper clay over the top, and it's stuck there for good, and it's really handy. I mean, it's really durable. I've worn this costume so many times and it's still intact, it's fine. And it's the same, I then did the same technique with these. There's a strap underneath them that goes straight onto the costume, that's why I couldn't create it's actually sewn onto it. So they're really good. That's a really good armor. That's one of my favorite armor techniques. Another one is using, sorry, I have 2 photos here. This is made out of a material called buckram, which you can find in pretty much most fabric stores like Fabricland. It's really stiff and really strong, sturdy material. And I then made a base, you can see in this probably a bit better, this armor base out of it first, and then you cover it in craft foam, which is really similar to the rubber that Julia had earlier, but I'm sure you probably all know what craft foam is.
Yeah.
You can cover it then in craft foam, and then to get, again, really nice finishes on it, you can spray it. There's all kinds of finishing sprays that you can buy. You can cover it in varnish, and then you can get really nice spray paints and get really good detail on it. But bark prim is something that's really solid. You can get really strong, sturdy armour out of. Another thing that I really love using, again, these aren't really very con or expo safe, so you have to check beforehand what they're going to be like. But this is, these are made out of biscuit tins. I'm very much all about trying to use recycled stuff for cosplay, like same thing with the headdress, like just using a plastic folder. It's really good. You can just find them lying around your house. You've got an old one. These were all old biscuit tins. This is slightly probably harder to make if you don't necessarily have the equipment, but you know, you might have the equipment lying around the house.
What kind of equipment? What kind of equipment do you use?
Yeah, well, if you have you have to have tin snips. That's probably the one thing that you would need. They're basically used for cutting the biscuit tins, and they're really sharp. You can get them in pretty much like a Robert Dyas, B&Q, Home Base. They're really cheap, and I think they're worth investing in. They're really good scissors for any kind of metal work that you're ever thinking of doing. Because I personally, if I can use metal in a costume, I really like using it because it just has such a nice finish to it. They look really nice, and in photos it comes out really good. And they're really comfortable to wear. They're really comfortable all day to wear. But yes, basically it's then made out of tin, and you cut out the shape you want. It's really easy to bend, it's really flexible. You can just bend it over yourself like that. And to get this kind of texture, you can just put it on like a surface that's got, I actually have a bit of wood that's got loads of kind of holes cut in it, and I use it for all my texturing. And you can just lay the biscuit tin over it and start just hammering on it, and you get this kind of warm texture. And this is the same thing as Julie was saying with her gauntlets. You just make each individual piece and sew them on, but you should make every pattern first. I do all of my patterns out of cards when I'm doing something like this, or you can make them out of craft foam. And then each one's articulated to each finger, so you can just sew. I've just punched little holes in it like this. Again, this is probably slightly more advanced because then you do need to have a punch. It's basically like a little sort of metal stick with a point at the end, so you just put it over biscuit tin, hammer it, and you've got a little hole punched in it. So then you can just stitch it then straight onto your glove, and it's really durable. Yeah, if anyone wants to look at them, I can pass them around.
Sorry, I'm asking so many questions.
Yeah.
I have a question about your opinion on using, like, for example, if you can't attach it to a glove, using something like split pins is something I've tried doing, but I've only tried it with craft sheet metal, not with something thicker like a biscuit tin. But if you have the hole punch, would that work, or?
Yeah, well, that's why, I mean, a hole punch is great because you do get, I'll pass them around so you can see, you get a really nice clean hole in it, and you can then just stitch it straight through onto it. But also if you do use metal, it's really important to file it down because you get some really nasty edges on this, so you have to file it, because even though I wouldn't really wear this at a corner expo because you're not particularly allowed unless you're kind of sneaky about it. You should make sure that it is still every edge is filed, because you can cut yourself really badly on it. And if you pass it around, you can feel the edges.
Actually, I have a chainmail making tutorial for anyone who wants to make insane real chainmails out of metal. It really is coiling wire and snipping wire and doing them one by one. My boyfriend now has done a whole chainmail shirt, so if anyone wants to see the reference, you can. I have it in my computer.
Yeah, you get really keen on stuff. You can. Metal work is great. It looks really good in photos. And one last thing, I brought this along. It's an unfinished thing, but I made this from a District 9 costume. This is just really quickly just to show you other methods that you can use. This is made out. This is just an old glove, as you can see, and it's made out of upholstery foam. Although I don't actually recommend using upholstery foam, you should use stuff that's called reticulated foam, because you can actually sew it. If anyone's used upholstery foam before, I don't know, has anyone used upholstery foam?
Yeah.
You might find that when you're sewing it, just rips right through a lot of the time.
I'm not saying that.
Yeah, well, I always find when I'm doing it, maybe I'm just clumsy, it rips through. If you use stuff that's called reticulated foam, it's basically, if anyone's ever had a goldfish, kind of know that you've got that kind of black foamy stuff that's in the filter in a goldfish, it's that. And it's really strong and it won't rip. So it's much better to use. And you can get that at the same place as the rubber we mentioned earlier, at this place called Pentacle Rubber in London. They do. You can order it online as well if you don't live in London. It's really great to go there. But something like this is then, you can then cut out shapes of it, and this is with upholstery foam. You can carve out your shapes. It's really good to carve them out of and stitch them over. And then this is then, the texture is built up with latex. Has anyone used latex before? Much? Here's mine. Latex is great stuff. I love latex so much. And
Unless
you
you're
can
allergic
use.
to it.
It stinks.
It's really smelly. If you do use it, you should have mouth protection on. It's really horrible.
It smells like toilet after that.
Yeah, it's got like a really hot, heavy ammonia scent to it.